with the show.
My God.
All right, the time is 6:10 p.m.
Jesus.
Oh, it's now 6:11 p.m.
Never forget.
Never forget that this is the beginning of a podcast. Hello, welcome to Film Fracas. I am Robbie DeShazer. Of course, as always, actually, it's our first episode. So, as for now, I'm joined by Carter Spilliards, who is here.
Hello, this is me, Carter Spilliards.
Brett The Rock Johnson.
How are you doing?
And Phoenix Zarola.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, we are all so excited to be here today on our first episode of Film Fracas. Brett, what is Film Fracas? Just describe the show.
Yes, hello, welcome to Film Fracas. Brett The Rock Johnson coming at you. So what we got here is kind of like a Survivor reality style like kind of competition. The four of us have put forth 3 movies each into a kind of pool, and each week we're going to be pulling a topic out of a hat, like best dialogue, best protagonist, best writing, what have you. And so then we're going to go down the list of all the movies, briefly talk about like the pros and cons, like how each movie fits for the challenge. And then at the end of the episode, we're each going to vote on which movie we thought was the weakest. And one of the movies will be voted off the proverbial island, so to speak.
All right. Yes. This show is steeped in reality television culture. But none of us are big reality TV fans, are we?
Actually, I just remembered a good comparison. Total Drama Island.
Total Drama Island.
Total Drama
Island.
This is...
Please sponsor us, Cartoon Network.
I guess.
No, wait, but then can we not curse?
I don't know.
Fart.
Let's not lose focus here.
Please sponsor us, Adult Swim.
Let's get our movies introduced.
All right, so Robbie, you want to kick us off? Let us know what movies you
for
got?
sure. So I've got 3 amazing picks coming at you, which all have a common thread of sorts. My first pick is 2008's Iron Man, a Paramount Pictures classic. The first film.
You want to stop being a shill for 2 seconds there, Robbie?
We know what Iron Man is.
Iron Man. Second is The Big Lebowski, 1998. And finally, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, 1988. So yes, my common thread is films that came out in years that ended with an 8. So I'm excited to talk about all of these. I feel like they well represent the diversity of films that I like. Jeff Bridges is 2/3 of my interests, I guess. But I'm really excited to talk about these films. They're all really cool. A lot of fun to talk about.
Some solid picks.
Do you call your lineup the Crazy Eights lineup?
Ooh, I will now.
Hell yeah.
You call them the Hateful 8 lineup?
Oh, the Loveful 8, because we love these movies.
The Ridiculous 6.
Oh, God.
No,
okay,
wait.
anyway, so I'm going to rein it back in here. Let's move along.
Let's move it on. All right. My movies, I wouldn't say they have a connecting thread except for all being amazing, which is not a thread at all. But the first movie I have is The Shining, directed by Stanley Kubrick. Year, I don't know, but it's very good. And I don't think the year is important right now.
1991.
It's earlier than that. It's earlier than 91.
It's 91.
I thought it was early. Anyway.
No, Silence of the Lambs is 91.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Shining.
The Shining.
Shining.
We're supposed to not know each other's picks, Carter.
The Shining is in the 80s, but I don't know the year off the top of my head. I'm assuming... I'm assuming you're finding it right now, Carter.
I am. It's
1980.
1980.
80, there we go.
The episode hasn't even started. We've already come to a screeching halt.
Yeah, it's already just gone off the
Sorry,
rails.
guys. I'll show myself out.
You know what?
All right.
Let
me get back to my next
right.
pick. All right. The second one, which already kind of was spoiled, but is Silence of the Lambs, directed by Jonathan Demme, which is in 1991. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
One Best Picture that year.
Yeah. And my final film is modern classic Moonlight, everyone's favorite movie from last year. As a hush goes through the room, as Phoenix drops
everyone remembers
the
seeing
bomb of a
Moonlight.
pick.
You can't really make jokes about Moonlight.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no joking around. It's fucking good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. You're
It
not
is.
wrong.
All right.
Phoenix coming in strong.
So moving on to my picks. Sorry about that, Phoenix. I picked Princess Bride, Rob Reiner, 1987. Fantastic.
Charming film.
Can't beat it. It is quite charming. It is quite charming. Marriage.
Okay, and
The second film, moving right along. Steven Spielberg's excellent Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I'm a huge fan.
Yeah.
I love it. It's great. And well, this is interesting. 2016's Damien Chazelle's La La Land.
Oh my God.
I'm sorry.
We're gonna throw down.
Actually, Carter picked Moonlight.
no, stop
Felix picks
vetoing this right now.
Yeah.
Sorry, Robbie.
There's been a mix-up.
Moonlight, you're actually Carter's pick.
Oh my God, stop.
We're bringing it back. No, just kidding. We're going to Brett.
Thanks, Phoenix. All right, so I chose RoboCop from 1987.
Ooh, solid pick.
The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring from 2001, and Lilo and Stitch from 2002.
All right. So we have 12 great films.
12
Curtis,
great films.
Just give us a rundown of everything once more. No comments, anything.
Yeah, no, once more. So we've got on our film Fracas Season 1.
Island of sorts.
Fracas Island.
Oh my God.
The Princess Bride. Indiana Jones The Last Crusade. La La Land. RoboCop. Lilo and Stitch. Lord of the Rings. Fellowship of the Ring. Silence of the Lambs. The Shining. Moonlight. The Big Lebowski. Iron Man. And Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
There we go. Some solid picks. Brett,
all solid.
Clarify real quick. Which version of the Fellowship of the Ring are we talking about?
The extended cut.
Edition.
Just because that's the one that I've seen the most, and I can't tell it apart from the regular version anymore. The regular version seems weird to me. So yeah, I just figured it'd be the extended cut.
All right.
There you go.
Good to include.
So most weeks we will be choosing our topic of debate from a hat, but we figured we'd be prepared this week.
I guess.
And we would do one that...
Did we choose we'd be prepared? Because look at what's happened so far.
Air quotes prepared.
I think we just chose, really.
We chose that we would do Protagonist for this one. And the reason we chose that is because I think it kind of encompasses the entirety of the film. It's a good
starting point.
Good primer for the podcast.
It's a good starting point.
So with that, let the fracas begin. Let's talk about some of these movies, guys.
Let's play the fracas.
Brett, do you want to go ahead and just give us your
just start
protagonists and start talking about this?
Oh, geez, put me on the spot here. Okay, so yeah, I guess we'll just start. RoboCop. Protagonist is
RoboCop.
The titular RoboCop, Alex Murphy. I feel like he's a very good protagonist. He is a police officer. He's a damn good police officer. He stands up for what's right. He tries to do the best job that he always can. Even when he is turned into a robot and has his humanity and memories taken away from him, he still is an officer of the law. And then he manages to get his humanity back, gets his memories back, remembers what it's like. He remembers what it's like, discovers what it means to be human, and he is human even though he's a cyborg. And he still goes out. He fights the good fight. He does a good job of what he does. He's a police officer, and old Detroit and new Detroit are going to be safer because of him. Lilo and Stitch.
Who are you calling the protagonist in Lilo and Stitch?
This is what I was about to get into. Yeah. I did a lot of thinking about this. It's like it could be Lilo or it could be Stitch. I feel like in a way it's kind of
it's Nani.
I mean, nope. I can make a case for Nani as well, but I feel like it's kind of both of them because the movie is about the both of them, so I feel like it's kind of like because
why there's an and
it's an ampersand, but it could be either of them because they find Lilo starts as the sad, lonely, just weird, different child who's at odds with her own family, her sister after her parents have died, and then she's at odds with literally everyone else, but like she keeps doing Lilo does her, she keeps going on, she lives her own life, and then she meets Stitch and she's just strong, she doesn't give up. And then Stitch is also a good protagonist. He starts as just the indestructible nonstop monster of destruction, but then he learns what it means to be a part of a family. He learns what it is to be good, and he overcomes his base programming to be a monster, to become just a part of the family and be, as they talk about in the movie, a member of society. And it's like, oh my gosh, why'd you pick me to go first?
You have a lot to talk about. You went last, and
Okay, sure. And then Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring. Carter and I were talking about this before the show. The protagonist could either be Frodo Baggins or the Fellowship itself, and either way, they're both very strong protagonists, because Frodo, nobody, a hobbit, a halfling from Shire up in the north, the middle of nowhere, he obtains the ring, this force of unspeakable, unstoppable evil, and he decides that he is going to go take it to Mordor. He is going to go into hell itself to destroy it and get rid of it. And he knows who he is. He knows what he is. He knows he doesn't belong in the rest of the world. He knows he's out of his element, but he stands up to do what everybody else could only bicker and argue about doing it. And he's like, I'm going to get this done. And then the Fellowship itself is your classic sword and sorcery group of great people that fight incredible odds, and they do everything to help each other, protect each other, and Frodo to get this task done and to stop Sauron and the orcs and Saruman and all the evil in Middle Earth.
Yeah.
So I feel like they're all very strong protagonists.
Yeah.
You guys might disagree, but
let's talk about those three real quick.
Your two picks at the end are interesting, since there's not one clear set, but more of like a group kind of. Mm-hmm. And I wonder, I mean, not hating on it, but I wonder if that strengthens or weakens those movies in terms of the topic at hand, because
it could go either way. But like in the case of Lilo and Stitch, you kind of have to consider them both as like a singular protagonist in a way, because if you were to get rid of one of them, it wouldn't be Lilo and Stitch. It would be a completely different movie.
correct,
For sure.
And then same thing with Lord of the Rings. The story would be fundamentally different if it didn't start with the Fellowship doing this task. If it were just, it would just be a completely different story. But that's why we're here. We're here to talk about these.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and make an enemy of myself. I'm not a fan of the Lord of the Rings.
And that's
yeah,
fine.
and we'll talk. We'll get into
I
it.
disagree, but I respect your opinion.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's one of those things I can tell it's a good and well-made movie, and I get why people like it. Just never grabs me. And
that's fine. That's fine.
I think it's because every time I try to watch the extended editions, and those are meant for
they are long.
a fan, and it's a 5-hour time requirement. It's like, hey, you want to sit down for 5 hours and watch something you're not that into?
You got to have some spare time lying around.
yeah.
But I will say that in the case specifically of Fellowship, I think Frodo is probably the main protagonist. If you're watching the entire trilogy as a whole, I think the Fellowship, kind of as your device of moving throughout the three stories, works as a better long-term protagonist. But I think Fellowship of the Ring really is about Frodo getting to be a part of the Fellowship, and then the first leg of their journey.
I see what you're saying. I disagree to an extent. I agree and disagree with various points that you're making to an extent, but like you're still saying that they're good protagonists.
Oh,
so
I still think they're good.
There's nothing to.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I agree and disagree with some things that you're saying, but there's no cause for fracas and debate right now.
I don't think there's any. Yeah.
Sorry, that was a non-issue.
I
That's
feel
my bad.
I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I feel like our first maybe safe bet is RoboCop, because the protagonist of RoboCop is fantastic. The titular role, as you explained, and arguably what makes that movie is the fantastic character of RoboCop and his journey and his transformation, his revenge, his way to tackle the law or uphold the law, and it's really good. It's really strong, and I feel like I'm correct in saying that I feel like it's safe this week. Would y'all disagree?
Yeah. I agree. I think RoboCop has, a very interesting and multifaceted character, and he has this very kind of intense journey that he has to go on to rediscover his humanity. Yeah,
sorry, go ahead.
No, yeah, and it's great. And then Lilo and Stitch, my 2 cents, at least with that, are, whereas you could make the argument with Fellowship of the Ring that it's either just Frodo or the Fellowship as a whole, kind of back and forth. I think you can't make the argument that it's Lilo and Stitch. It's together they're the lead.
Oh yeah,
right.
Because Stitch on his own, he obviously is a character and he has a personality and does stuff, but he doesn't even speak until the very end, when he's like, I know you could talk.
That's when he starts speaking like full coherent sentences, but he talks throughout.
No,
the movie.
yeah, he talks. But it's one of those things where it's like Lilo almost kind of interprets stuff with him and for him, kind of stuff.
Yeah,
when communicating with other people, and so they kind of work as a package deal. Like they have to.
Yeah.
To get each other's message across.
Yeah, it's in the tradition of like package deal films.
Yeah.
Like when Harry met Sally, you don't.
Yeah.
It's not Harry is the protagonist and Sally's
supporting Harry. Yeah,
they're both there. They're both the mains. Like
so I was thinking like you could consider either of them the protagonist, but I do think like it's a package deal.
And I agree with Robbie with Fellowship. I think your protagonist is 100% Frodo, because the movie starts with Frodo. It's Frodo's journey. In that moment at the Council of Elrond is like, he says, "I will take it. I will take the ring to Mordor." And that's kind of his defining heroic moment in that film.
Yeah.
So
it is funny though. I think you could make the argument that Brett has all three of his picks have split protagonists, even with RoboCop. Like RoboCop is Alex Murphy in the beginning, but he's learning to be a new person at the end. Like he's rediscovering humanity, but he's not, by the end, he's not Alex Murphy as much as he is RoboCop the cyborg. Like
no, he's still Alex Murphy. He gets his memory and his life back. His life has just been totally upended, but he is still Alex Murphy, which is why at the very end, when he saves the old man at OCP and he says, "Nice shooting, officer. What's your name?" And he turns and looks at him and says, "Murphy."
Oh, I agree. I'm not saying that like he's a different, like he's no longer called, but like RoboCop Alex Murphy is incredibly different from Alex Murphy, like human Alex Murphy. I think that's undeniably I think they are so separate, but like they work as the same thing. I think it's another one where, but his journey is really as RoboCop, like.
Okay, I'm not entirely following you. I think I understand what you're saying, but I don't think I entirely follow.
Oh, I think that Alex Murphy's.
But we're not here to dissect RoboCop. No. We got 9 other movies we got to discuss.
Yeah, we can move on to the other movies. Carter.
All right, so let's go with my films. Princess Bride, Wesley. What can we say about Wesley?
I don't know. What are you going to say about Wesley?
As you wish. I love him. He's great. The Dread Pirate Roberts, like, he is your fundamental, like, storybook protagonist. Like, he's like Prince Charming, but bad, but also great. And it's that kind of, he goes on this journey, and it's true love, and it's just so wholesome and so good. But, I mean, on top of that, he's clever and skilled, and, I mean, he's so good. Love me some Wesley.
Okay. I'm going to throw a quick disclaimer in here real quick. I haven't seen The Princess Bride since I was in 7th grade, and I remember not liking it, but I'm going to try to be as objective as possible and not let my personal bias get in the way. So I don't remember Princess Bride very well. I remember not liking it, but again, it's been over 10 years at this point. So if I seem aggressive or hostile about it, I do not mean to. Okay. So anyway, continue. Sorry.
Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade, the third Indiana Jones.
Last Crusade is the protagonist.
Last Crusade is the protagonist. Yeah. Yes. No.
Actually, Jesus is the protagonist.
I mean, in a way, but searching for the Holy Grail. I mean, it's Indiana Jones. Like, he's your, quintessential hero.
Your quintessential adventure
hero. I mean, he fucking punches Nazis in the face. Like, you can't beat that.
Promoter of the education.
I mean, he's a professor. Yeah. He goes on adventures.
He does. I will say, Indiana Jones in this movie keeps on saving the Nazi girl, and every time I'm like,
that's true. You're like, well,
I'm like, no, she's a Nazi.
She's a Nazi. Like, let her die.
Let her die. She is a Nazi. So he may punch him, but like, if they're cute enough, he'll smooch him.
Yeah,
like,
if he's yeah. And then La La Land is, again, this is kind of a pair, and you've got Mia and Seb, and they're in love, and that's.
You're just looking at me. You're like trying to.
That's about
it.
I just like that you were like making direct eye contact with me the entire. Like Mia and Seb.
Trying so hard not to look at me, because I do not like La La Land at all.
I actually I actually might say that it might be just Mia as the protagonist, because I mean we start off with her in the car, and her
Actually, we start off with a wonderful musical number on Overpasses.
We begin with Another Day of Sun. But a lot of the beginning is just, like her struggling as an actress, and then, the someone in the crowd scene, and then her finding Seb. And then at the end, it's even her life when she goes back to Seb, and then the vision when she sees the life she could have had with Seb.
Except none of that would have happened without Seb to help her along to that point.
100%.
I feel like Mia, if Mia's the protagonist, she's not a strong or good protagonist. Because the whole movie is just her struggling, and then she puts on the one-woman show, and nobody shows up except somehow, for some reason, some big shot producer, and then she's ready to give up and just go away. But then Seb comes in, saves the day. It's like, hey, they want you to audition for this thing. She goes, she makes it big, and then they have the big vision, and she looks disappointed. But then it's kind of like, no, she's happy. But it's like, if Seb didn't come in there to help her out, she would have been sad, broken.
So there's
she
Mia
would have been
and
spit out. So I
Manic
feel like
Pixie Dream Boy Seb,
I mean, if
he comes here to fix all of her problems.
If we're talking about Mia as the only protagonist, she might show a lot of flaw. If we're talking about their duo, I could see a little bit more help to their characters, but if we're settling that Mia's the protagonist,
she's not a very good protagonist.
And then,
and then even as a duo, since that duo is made up of two, and half of that's not good, it's still only a half good protagonist. And even then, Seb does a little bit more, but it's just kind of like.
So to compare it to our other duo, to Lilo and Stitch, I think that
where
they both help each other. They both have problems
Lilo and
that
Stitch
they grow
both
to
bring
fix.
each other into the world, and I don't want to say complete each other, because that isn't entirely that just sounds cheesy, but it's kind of
there's a reason why it's cheesy. It's
but they help each other not feel alone. They help each other change, and they become the family. Whereas Mia and Seb are just kind of like Mia and Seb.
I mean, Mia and Seb quite literally don't complete each other, because that's kind of the whole point of the movie, is that they're apart, and that's how they couldn't realize their dreams if they'd stayed together.
Except there's no good reason that they couldn't have wound up together. They could have been together. I mean, it makes no sense.
That's getting into the story of the movie, though.
I know, but still, it's it's like.
But I mean, are we all pretty firmly in agreement that Indiana Jones is?
Oh, Indiana Jones
probably pretty safe.
Indiana Jones, safe protagonist.
Just because of how cool I feel based on how cool he is. But then sorry, you.
I was just gonna say that yes, but I also feel like this is of the three. There's four, but of the three Indiana Jones movies, this is the one where I feel it's also more of a duo, because you got the Sean Connery character in it as well.
He does come into it, but I would say he's even still. I mean, he's not even in the movie until half an hour in. Yeah, I mean
the protagonist and character of Indiana Jones is solid, and iconic enough to where I feel like it's safe so far.
Mm-hmm. He stands well on his own in this movie. Yeah. I think Sean Connery does a great job of kind of being
supporting him.
Yeah, supporting him. They have a great rapport together.
I would even say this is Sean Connery in this movie is almost like the definition of a supporting character, because he's really there to develop Indy's background and character, and kind of give the audience another look into his history and who he is.
It's one of the first Indiana Jones movies, I think. I mean, it's the third one in the original trilogy of sorts, but it's kind of one of the first ones where it's oh yeah, this is Indiana Jones, and he's not just cool because he's cool. He kind of has a backstory to him in this film. Yeah. You feel like he's more of a character than just a,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, all right.
Adventurer,
And what about Wesley?
Wesley, I think he's pretty good. Yeah. I don't have any dislikes about Wesley. He's kind of white bread.
He is very good.
He's the vanilla milkshake of this round, I think.
But he's not. I mean, he's not.
He's
bad.
solid. There's nothing wrong with him.
My only complaint about Wesley, and again, it's been a decade since I've seen this movie. It's just based on what I remember. It's he's really cool. He just wasn't very compelling, at least to me. Just because he's kind of oh yes, I can beat everybody, I'm great. And then, yes, he dies, but then he comes back to life. And I'm like, oh, this guy is literally unstoppable.
He was only mostly dead.
Sure, I will take your word for it, Carter.
Yeah.
I remember him getting strapped down to a table. The pump gets set up to 50, and then he dies.
Yeah. I mean,
but like, yeah, it's like
Yeah.
I'm like, there's nothing I dislike except for that. But that's just me disliking like a character being written that way. But it's like that doesn't make him less of a good guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like to start?
Oh,
doing
do you want me to go? Or
Yeah.
do you want to go?
Robbie,
after
go.
you. Okay,
Robbie.
I'll go.
Go for it.
Just go around the table.
My first pick is Iron Man with protagonist Tony Stark / Iron Man. I think he's a pretty solid one. I don't know if I need to talk too much about him, but he has a good arc through this entire story. This is
solid.
unlike other Marvel Cinematic Universe movies where it kind of has to connect. So he has kind of a standalone arc compared to, when you get to Thor 3 or something and it's like, well, Thor's got to make it through to the next Avengers movie or whatever. So I like that it stands alone. He has a decent arc through the story. I don't think there's too much to talk about him. He starts off as a jerk. He learns to be a hero.
Learns to be a hero.
Yeah,
It's a lot of fun.
It's good.
Robert Downey Jr. is a treasure as
He is.
well, at least in the first Iron Man.
he's
But before he just turns into sass and quips for
that's
for the
fair.
rest of the.
We can talk.
But that's a whole nother.
That's
podcast.
a whole that's about the
But no,
Marvel
for-
Cinematic Universe as a whole. Talking Iron Man, real good character,
Yeah,
real good protagonist.
It's great.
The Big Lebowski, who can deny that the dude is the center? He is pretty much all of that movie is about. I love Jeffrey Lebowski, the dude, so much. He doesn't have that much going for him, but that's kind of the nature of the film. Not this crazy bunch of shit happens to him.
Yeah.
He drinks some White Russian, smokes some weed, and continues and hopes he wins the bowling tournament.
He's good.
But he is so the performance by Jeff Bridges is amazing. The dude is so quotable. There's so much that happens to him, and it's just fun to use him as your, protagonist, as the lens that the audience views the world through. Because it's such an, you have really two things going on in this movie, which is the dude and then the crazy, maddening world that he is dealing with. And then finally, I went with Eddie Valiant from Who Framed Roger Rabbit, Bob Hoskins' character. A fictional Californian private detective. I think he's got a compelling story too. He lost his brother to a tune, and he hates tunes because of it. And I don't know. I like him. He's a solid detective. He, does the whole. I think he does it really well. I think it's a good movie. I think I've got three solid protagonists.
I think that the dude is probably the weakest.
Oh, really?
Out of your three, just because Iron Man he goes through that whole he has his whole arc. He goes through his whole change. It's fine. Eddie Valiant, he's a great PI. I didn't know he was fictional. Thank you for clarifying.
I'm just reading literally his Wikipedia page.
I know, but just you get notes.
I did get
anyway,
notes.
but he has his whole arc as well, where it's he hates tunes, but then he learns to accept them, and he learns that they're not all bad, and he doesn't give up despite the fact that he just constantly gets just kicked around for that whole movie, and he just has to put up with Roger Rabbit, who God love him is very annoying.
Yeah,
but then the Big Lebowski, it's kind of he doesn't I know you say he's the lens that we view the world through, but it's kind of he doesn't do anything. Yeah, he drinks White Russians,
helps his friend get pregnant,
smokes weed. And then just that's it's just a bunch of stuff happens to him, and then it's kind of it's just I feel like he's probably the weakest protagonist out of your three there.
Yeah, if we're going off of hero's journey, because definitely
it's hero's journey.
That's something I was going to bring up after we had after Phoenix had talked about his as well. It's going to be how are we deciding what is the criteria for best protagonist?
Okay.
So you've got Tony Stark's got he's got his arc from asshole to hero. You've got with Valiant, he goes from hating tunes to understanding and working and tolerating. I guess he doesn't.
It's a story of tolerating.
It's more of tolerating.
And the dude is the same at the end as he was at the beginning. He's
Like, I
In defense of the dude, it's not a film that is made like
no, and it's,
like it is definitely probably like the most different movie of all the movies we've talked
Yeah.
about so far
because
But-
it is
but-
so slice of life. Like it's not.
like yeah, I get that, and I get like he's the everyman and such, but it's just kind of like just when you compare him to like just when you compare him to everybody else that we've talked about so far, out of your picks, he's probably
Oh, he's probably the weakest out of my picks, but
Yeah.
I don't think he's the weakest.
Yeah,
And
well,
that's
that's what we're here for. That's
Yeah.
that's what we're talking
because I
about.
would say that while he doesn't have a journey, he has the personality, and that's what drives him as a protagonist, as opposed to this hero's journey. Because the story doesn't present itself with a hero's journey.
Yeah, and that's the difficulty of judging. I feel like judging your film right now is because the dude is so iconic and so known and such like a character that is just prevalent in the lexicon of the world. But if we actually break down his role in the film and like what he serves, he's not totally active and he doesn't have much of a change, which is, like the pros and cons to his character. I mean, it's up for up for voting. It's up for debate.
What this is all about.
But that's the crux of that character. That's the crux of that issue is how much do we look into how popular a character is to how much they change or their actual complexity of their characters.
Yeah,
that's true.
I mean, complexion isn't all. I will just say complexion is not always a good thing, though. Like you can have an over. Like I'm not saying simplicity is better, but I'm saying like just having something for the sake of being complicated is not always just a determining factor.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
I would agree with that.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Phoenix?
Yeah.
Okay.
Moving on to my films. I would say that Moonlight is my first one, and how can we forget Little / Chiron / Black? I mean, his story is just absolutely beautiful and moving. It's it's about a boy discovering himself and the faults that can have in his society, but he somehow through such tragedy was able to find himself and finally find peace with him by the end of the film and recognize and appreciate his own homosexuality. So I think that's fantastic and just a wonderful, wonderful story and a wonderful character. Moving on, we got The Shining, which if I would classify the protagonist to be Jack Torrance, and I feel like his character is interesting in this one because his is kind of like a tragedy.
He's not a good guy.
Yeah, well, I see his character as like a tragedy figure. Like he's a father who is arguably a little
Sorry,
scary.
Brett was shaking his head,
sorry.
and I thought he was like, I was like, no, Brett, he is a father. Like, but that was like, that's not what he's saying.
Yeah. Sorry.
He's a father with an arguably scary past, but through like his own living into the hotel and the what's it called, the wilderness madness or whatever. Well, like the
Cabin
thing
fever?
cabin fever is the cabin fever
Wilderness
and
madness.
yeah, wilderness madness.
Got a bad
That's a
taste in
ska
it.
band.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. That does sound.
That's my next feature.
The cabin fever and the burial grounds and all of the things that are affecting his life. He kind of loses himself and becomes like a psychopath. And it's interesting and different from the other ones we picked because it's not necessarily about someone's change in a positive light. It's more of someone's change in a very negative light. So that's that on that. And then the last one we got is Silence of the Lambs, which is FBI cadet Clarice Sterling, who is, young rookie cop who is kind of in over her head with this case because she's having to interview and investigate with this, deranged maniac to find clues about this even more deranged maniac. And she's intimidated by Hannibal Lecter. She's out of her element. Does nothing like she learned when she was like in the academy, but she takes it like a champ. She deals with it. She fights it. She takes the punches with him. She learns his mind, knows how to talk to him. Works with that relationship and that friendship to kind of get the clues, and she finds Buffalo Bill and stops him. It's just about like, someone overcoming the odds that they are presented with them, and I think that's incredible.
She's really good.
Yeah. Out of these 3 films,
You've got a weird pick there. You got a hard fight for Jack Torrance there.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because with Moonlight, obviously Chiron is the centerpiece, and it's extremely thorough in his whole journey, and then like you just explained with Clarice that she also has to go on this whole.
But like someone says Clarice,
this whole journey,
I'm done.
But Jack Torrance is the villain of that movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He is not. He might be the focus, but he is not the protagonist.
I mean, Wendy Torrance is maybe the protagonist, but then she
maybe.
also
Danny
maybe.
But anybody who goes crazy and tries to murder their own family, I would say, is probably not the protagonist of that movie. He's very tragic. Like, yes, he's a very tragic movie.
But he's a tragic villain.
So you'd say if that's the case, I would lean more towards Danny being the protagonist, because I don't think it's Wendy, because Wendy is just, she's kind of just the person to kind of take in and kind of take control of the situation of escaping Jack. But Danny's the other one with the shining. He's the one that kind of alerts his mother and alerts the chef that's out of town and stuff. He's the one that's kind of actively doing things and kind of fighting the hotel itself, which I kind of see the hotel as the villain and Jack as the protagonist. But if that's not the case, I'll take Jack as the...
Make your argument.
It's...
Don't let us sway you as to what...
All right. I see it as the hotel being...
live your truth.
I see it as the hotel being the villain, and the hotel... And just the mystical force of it is kind of took over Jack as a person, because he's the one that's kind of struggling with his being a family man, but also like being a writer, but also being taken over. He's the one that he goes and he gets influenced by the different people, like the people in the room and the people at the gold room. When I say room, I meant the hotel room, like hotel
237.
237.
Yeah.
And then people in the gold room. It's kind of his person that's kind of falling into the clutches of this hotel that's like taking a hold on him. So I kind of see, instead of it being like Jack is the one that's trying to kill his family, I see it as kind of the hotel using Jack as a medium to kill the family.
Okay,
so
Yeah.
I take it as that sense.
Yeah, but what does this have to do with faking the moon landing?
Oh, okay. So basically,
Stop.
the hotel is John F. Kennedy.
Phoenix,
The
stop.
hotel is John F. Kennedy. First shirt available for this podcast says the hotel is John F. Kennedy.
Yes. But that's my take on it. I would be interested to hear who y'all think is the protagonist in it, and I'll try and take it there. Do y'all see my point in that?
I see your point.
Yeah, sorry.
Go for it.
There you go.
No, I was just gonna say, like, I see your point, but I would not classify Jack as the protagonist.
Yeah.
It's like, yes, he becomes like the conduit for like the evil in the hotel, but that like kind of fundamentally turns him into an antagonist, a villain, and so it's like, even if he's the protagonist up until he becomes evil and has that tragic fall, somebody else, like, you need to have a protagonist after that, and so it's kind of just, I don't see Jack as the protagonist.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair.
It would be Wendy or Danny, but you don't think Wendy would make a good protagonist. I don't think Wendy would make a particularly good protagonist either. But that's just me.
Yeah.
And
That's also the thing with horror movies, is there's not a lot of great protagonists in horror.
But there is a very clear protagonist even in bad horror movies. There's a clear who's the protagonist.
Oh, it's clear, but often it's like,
this
they
is
can't
not
be
to
too
say
strong.
that The Shining is a bad horror movie.
Yeah,
I'm just like,
I would like to add, though, in the case between Wendy and Danny, I kind of feel like Danny would be the protagonist, because if we're looking at it from a story perspective, he's the one that's kind of given more of a focus aside from Jack than Wendy is, and then also in the finale or the climax of the film, which is both the attack on Wendy, but also the chase that Jack does with Danny in the maze. And it's kind of with Danny's own ability to where he's able to escape with Wendy. And so I would kind of put that into the ring of saying probably Danny's the protagonist then. And I think
But you're still submitting Jack as the protagonist for.
that's just how I see it. But
And I think that's what we.
I could, yeah.
yeah,
That's what we have to judge. We have conversations
I
about.
think you could almost make the argument that The Shining doesn't have a protagonist.
Like,
But
And
if you
we-
got to
Yeah.
put one forward for the sake of a
Yeah.
podcast.
but if we do that, then that's
yeah.
very we're gonna sell. How do y'all feel about
Your other
Moonlight
picks?
and Silence of the Lambs?
So here's my thing with Moonlight, and I think absolutely Chiron is your like main protagonist. He's the focus.
Without question.
Yeah, and he has a great journey of self-discovery. But other than that, I'm not sure like how strong of a character he is, and that's because I think he's intentionally vague. He's not necessarily a Chiron the character. He is a stand-in for anyone going through that kind of situation, and so like as a character, as a story, it's very beautiful. But as a character, Chiron is because he's very everyman for a very specific community, but like because he's so everyman, because he's so vague, I don't know if he stands particularly strong as compared to some of the other protagonists put out there.
I feel like he stands very strong because we get Little, who like he's kind of uncomfortable, kind of not very confident in himself, and he realizes that like what was Mahershala Ali's character's name?
Blue.
Juan?
Was it?
He's
Juan?
yeah, he's
Was
like
it
Juan.
Juan? Yeah, but he finds out like his hero Juan is a drug dealer who sells the drugs to his mom, which is why his mom's like so messed up, and he's kind of like, well, my hero is fallen. I don't want to be like that. Then you get middle-aged, you get middle Chiron, who he makes that choice of I'm not going to let these people.
Yeah, Juan.
Yeah, he's kind of I'm sick of being walked over. I'm not going to let these bullies take me down anymore. And he gets himself in trouble for it, but he makes that choice of like I'm going to be confident, and if this is how I have to do it, that's what I'm going to do. And then he's still putting up with his mom and realizing just kind of like, wow, my mom is not a good person. She's been spit up and torn apart by these drugs. Then you get old Chiron, who has become Juan, even though it's kind of like you see that in the beginning, but he's made the choice to do this, and he's found like who he is. And then he goes and forgives his mom, even seeing like even how terrible she was. And just like is he an everyman to an extent? But I just feel like the choices he makes are just like so kind of I kind of did a double take, or I was kind of like, oh, he's become a drug dealer when like he like that kind of like turned his life upside down.
Oh yeah, for sure.
In a manner of speaking. So I feel like he's a lot stronger protagonist than you're giving him credit for.
I'm not saying he's a weak protagonist by any, but he is intentionally vague, and I think that those choices are not necessarily choices that any other character in that situation wouldn't make. Like because the character is really about the cycle of poverty and the marginalization of homosexuals in the black community. Like because he's so open to anyone could see themselves in Chiron's shoes is why I think that's my take on it, at least, is that because anyone in that situation could see themselves in that, and he's a victim of this cycle, is that those aren't necessarily his choices, but rather the choices that he's kind of forced to make.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that he's passive, and he's passive in the sense that he's influenced by the people around him and the society around him. So I see what you're saying, but I also would go back to what Brett was highlighting with like his choices are ultimately what affect his future and his own self. It's the choices and the active parts that he's done are what kind of create his own change and his own journey. Like it's the choice to like follow Juan and Paula when he's little is what affects him to become Chiron as a teenager, and the choice he makes when he hits I think it's Kevin, the bully, or not the bully, the one that punches him. That's the choice that ultimately leads him to becoming black at the end. And so I think in that sense, his character is a little bit like those are the highlights and kind of peeks into his own complexity of a character.
Yeah, those are fair. Do you have anything to add to that, Carter?
I agree. I think that he is kind of made to be a relatable character. I don't necessarily think he would. I wouldn't say that they make him intentionally vague.
Vague may be the wrong term.
Yeah, I would say that they definitely define him as his own person with his own unique experiences, and he goes through, character defining moments that are unique to him, and he has his own journey. I would just say all of that is kind of making him as a character, but like what he represents as a character in the movie is what people can relate to.
Yeah.
More so than what he individually, like, as the character in the movie goes through.
Robbie, I think you're making him sound like you make him sound like a little too passive.
And I don't want,
or at least that's just.
No, he makes choices.
That's kind of what I'm getting.
But these are choices that are
saying.
Products of an environment that
right.
he can't escape from.
You just make it sound like he's just kind of like, well, I guess I'll just have to be a drug. You just make him sound like a lot. I don't know how to word it, but it's just kind of like, to me, it sounds like you're making him seem like.
Oh, and I'm not trying to bash the character.
I know. I'm not saying you're doing that. I'm just saying the way it came across to me.
Yeah.
So I think it's. I understand what you're saying.
I think we've we've kind of understood the point that you're making about him. Do we want to touch on Clarice or get into voting?
I think she's a pretty standard protagonist. I mean,
I feel
she's good.
Clarice is pretty solid.
So we want to put forward our official vote.
I think we.
Okay. Who do we want to start with?
Let me choose last.
You want to choose last?
Yeah, I want to choose last.
I feel like now I want you to choose first. Just for claiming it.
How about we go reverse order
of how we were going?
How about we just go you?
Yeah, I'll go first.
Start the fracas.
All right, yeah. So I was thinking it over. I feel like all of us have pretty safe and pretty solid choices that are definitely shouldn't be considered. We all have one or two in our lineups that have very clear and strong protagonists. And I think at the same time, I feel like we all have one or two that are, a little weak in our lineups for a protagonist. That's just the name of the game. We pick three each. They're not all going to be right for every category. And I was thinking it over, and I feel, and it hurts me to do this.
Uh-oh.
It hurts a lot. I feel like I got to go with La La Land on this one. I think the point that we were making with, Mia's character, she's, if we're looking at Mia, she's very passive and kind of really needs the support she needs. And then when she doesn't get it, she, instead of overcoming, she kind of falls and like almost gives up until Seb has to save her again. And then if we're looking at them as a duo, they try, they fail for a relationship within a year. So that's not even that strong to begin with. And then, they're best separate, and that's like a testament to like maybe not how strong they were. And so even though I really do love that movie, I gotta say La La Land might be my pick for the first one gone.
But is it? It might be, but is it?
It is my pick for the first one gone.
All right. One for La La Land.
One for La La Land.
Ugh, it feels bad.
Put it on the board.
I was super torn because I've got two that I think are both like not bad, but they aren't strong protagonists. And I think that Phoenix made enough of an argument for me against the idea that Jack Torrance isn't the villain that I think I've got to go with La La Land as well. I could go ahead and repeat everything Phoenix said, everything we said before, but I think Mia is super weak on her own. Mia and Seb aren't that great together. They're great together in the movie, but they aren't that great of a protagonist. And I won't continue to beat this dead horse. I'll let you go, Carter.
Y'all, this is going to come as a shock. But I also think it's La La Land.
Oh!
In the course of our discussion, it became painfully obvious. And I could have said The Shining because that was what I think was second place, but everyone put up enough of a diverse argument multiple ways that, these are all these kinds of protagonists and each argument had depth, but with La La Land, it really is. That's not really what you go and watch the movie for. And that's one of the weaker parts, and I accept it.
Oh man! All right.
Ooh,
well,
and Brett's got to vote too.
Yeah,
just to hear his final thoughts.
Yeah, it's not gonna change anything. But what were you thinking, Brett?
was a toss-up between... Because I originally was kind of thinking the dude, but then like I thought about it, I was kind of like, but like he is like super popular, he's super memorable, like he is the dude, and it's like, and I do like the dude. I was just like comparing it to like all the hero's journey stuff we'd been talking about, so I knocked him out of there.
Comparing him to like fantasy, you know,
right? Yeah, but like I took a step back, tried to think about it. I was kind of like, yeah, it's kind of like he is the everyman. We do view the world through that lens. So then it was a toss-up between The Shining and La La Land. But ultimately I do feel like it's La La Land because Phoenix did put up such a fight for The Shining, and there was such arguments there. And it's kind of like, even if Danny isn't the protagonist until Jack turns evil, he still ultimately does more than Mia or Seb do.
That's true.
Ever. Mm-hmm. And so my vote for worst protagonist is A La La Land.
Yeah.
Oh
all
my
right,
gosh.
That fracas is unanimous.
That is a unanimous.
I bet.
I'm so glad we have a unanimous one this early in the podcast.
Yeah.
Brett, I bet you're happy about this one because
Oh.
your least favorite.
Don't let my calm demeanor fool you. I am over the moon.
You won't have to talk about it in the coming weeks.
Now it doesn't matter what wins at the end. I'm just happy that La La Land's out of here.
It's the first one out.
It's the first
I feel
one
like
gone.
that's really
so
a shock.
and
anything
it's a
could
shame.
happen.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about antagonists with it because I don't think John Legend is the
I
antagonist.
don't think
of
it really has an antagonist. So
The antagonist-
It would have lost.
life, yeah.
So I gotta say,
boy.
Carter, I'm hurt that I had to vote for it because I
I-
really wanted it to last longer because I
too.
love it.
I
but
love it too.
Yeah,
I
it's gone.
But I couldn't lie to myself. I couldn't lie to y'all. I could have been like, it's The Shining, but that wouldn't have been true to myself. I mean, I know La La Land's got the worst.
All right.
I'm not losing any sleep over.
So here's what I think we should end each podcast with, because we might as well. Go ahead and do like the part where you pub yourself, give your social media handles out, whatever. But also give a recommendation of a movie you watched since the last episode that you think everyone should go see, or
Eagle versus Shark. It's on Netflix. It's really good. There you go, Austin.
Phoenix Sorola's pubbing Eagle versus Shark. What's your Twitter handle and your Instagram and all that stuff?
Don't worry about my Instagram. It doesn't matter. But my Twitter handle is @BombAssPhoenix.
All right. Go follow him on Twitter. Yeah. Carter Billiards.
What have I watched? Oh my gosh. I watched a lot of these movies recently.
We both saw Black Panther.
Yeah, we both saw Black Panther. I wasn't going to say that because everyone's saying Black Panther. But sure. Yeah, go see Black Panther if you haven't. Please, it's fantastic. Go watch it. You can follow me on Twitter @CASpilliards. Like, spill something in your yard and add an S.
Brett the Rock Johnson.
Yeah, I saw Black Panther, but I also watched the HBO television series Carnival. Watched the first season. It's very good. It's a nice, slow burn, good versus evil story if you're into that. Only 12 episodes. That's pretty good. You can find me on Snapchat. I am Brett JHNSN #1. And yeah, you can watch me just post things out of my everyday life. It's a nice little slice of life thing.
Yeah. I would also say Black Panther. It's fantastic. Go see Molly's Game. Molly's Game is really good, and see it while you still can. It's going to be out of theaters soon. I am Robbie_DeShazer on Twitter and also on Instagram. Go follow me on all those places. This has been Film Fracas, a reality-based podcast about films. We'll figure that out later. Good episode. Let's do it.
All right. Till next time.
We'll get that down next time.
For
All right.
episode 2.
Episode 2. Turn in. Yeah.